and eventually started shooting.
Fox News alert, at least 250, and we're hearing reports of even more. Israelis are dead and more than 1,500 wounded after the terrorist group Hamas launched an unprecedented air, ground, and even sea assault on Israeli soil. Israel responded with a large-scale counteroffensive on militants in Gaza City, and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu declaring war, telling his people they will fight to win.
What is up this evening, y'all? We've got a lot of stuff we want to cover. But first thing we want to say is T's not with us tonight because his lovely bride, Amber, had back surgery today. Everything went good, but they're at home recovering. So keep T in your or Amber in your thoughts and prayers there. And probably T too, because Amber's got a gun. But tonight we do have Angery and Sue here together side by side. And look at that. They're like in unison. It's like one brain controls them both. And then we have my very good friend, Pete Robertucci, in with us tonight. How you doing, Pete?
I'm doing good. I'm all by myself down here. I got these two guys up here together. I feel lonely.
You feel all by yourself? Well, me and you, we're just they're just the odd couple. Is all it is. They're the straight on odd couple. You know.
We are odd.
You know. So Pete, thanks for being here with us, man. And it's awesome that you're here as a fellow writer now, because you know that's what you're doing, which is fantastic. And I love having you here. But I think a lot of folks know that you write, but they don't know some of the other fun stuff that you're into. So come on, let's get that good old Pete Robertucci bio rolled out, man.
So originally, well, way back in the day, in my past life, I was an electrician. Threw that aside.
Me too.
Decided, I know it was a good move for probably both of us. But went into something I really enjoyed doing. That was firefighting. And then from that, started getting into some SWAT medic stuff, and then firearm instructing. And then I, like you said, I put together a couple scribbles on some pages, and it happened to take off. So that's my bio in the few minutes allotted to me there.
So you've got let's give them some titles, because you've got not only your fiction works, you've got your nonfiction works too. So I mean, when you got into it, you got busy and started putting ink on the page. So
yeah, and a lot of that was thanks to you, because you invited me to the book signing last year at Mountain Readiness, and a lot of people asked me, "Look, I like fiction, but what am I going to learn from your books?" So I got to thinking, I'm a preparedness guy by nature, and I have all these guidelines that I've already put together for our group. I go, let me put those on paper and get them out to help everybody. So I put a couple of manuals out. I'm going to do 5 in total, but they'll be at Fallout. So if anyone comes to see us out there at Mountain Readiness at Van Hoy Campgrounds, we'll definitely have those for people to check out. But we do have our first book, 3 Days to Eden, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. And then the second book's out is called Eden Under Threat. So it'll probably be a 3-book series, but we all know how that goes. Next thing you know, I'll be writing book 12. So we'll see.
Yeah, you never try to. At least for me, it doesn't work to put a time frame on anything, even the number of books that I'm doing. So
speaking of the 12,
so hey, it's on pre-order. Have you ordered yours yet?
No.
Of course you have not. Good grief.
We want an autographed copy.
But by Pete. We want Pete to sign it.
We want Pete to sign it. Yes, I signed one of my books the other day at an event I did at the library that I wrote with Alan Kay, Declining Decay. Alan had signed it, and I'm looking, and there was another signature in it, and I'm like, what the hell did you have Gray Beard, Green Beret sign my book for? Not that I care. I just thought it was hilarious, because I know Josh. He's a great dude. So you said you got into doing like SWAT medic stuff. And I know from our conversations, because we've hung out a little bit, from time to time, that you go down to Immokalee and you work with some of Angery's comrades down there, some Israeli guys that run a.
Mm-hmm.
What the hell that is? So which did you prefer? So you got a little bit of American SWAT style tactics, a little bit of Israeli style tactics. Like, what made you go that way in your training side?
Well, what made me go that way originally in our training side is, I'm sure you remember, we had an incident in Orlando at a nightclub, and the SWAT personnel there weren't exactly prepared for what was going on inside the building. So I looked at that from an EMS standpoint, actually, because I was reading the after action reports, and I said, it took 60 minutes to get to these patients. How could I have gotten there quicker? And I realized it wasn't an EMS problem. It was a tactics problem. Not that they were wrong. They were going by their SOGs, and that has since changed. But I started diving into that. What's the best tactics, and who's better at dealing with these type of people, same type of people that committed that event over there in Orlando, than the Israelis. So I did a little bit of research, right? And what I came across, which really interests me, was an incident in 1985 at Rome International Airport. A bunch of terrorists, I don't remember which ones. There was probably 4. Go ahead.
My dad was there as the head of LL security.
Okay, so we really need to talk, because maybe you can help me put some pieces together. But what happened was basically 1 or 2 Shin Bet agents that were responsible for security, from what I understand, basically mitigated this threat. And the way they did it, I want to know how they did it. Why were they able to do it? They were outgunned. They were throwing the bad guys were throwing grenades. Terrorists were throwing grenades. They had AK-47. These guys had pistols, and they were able to mitigate 3 or 4 people, maybe apprehend the 4th. I'm not sure. How were they able to do it, and how can we apply that to the United States SWAT? So I dove in feet first. I found a guy teaching it up in DC and Virginia, spent 3 weeks with him. And not to say that it's better, don't get me wrong, but it is another tool in the toolbox to use. So our SWAT methods at the time of the Pulse incident were surround, contain, negotiate. But Emery, as you can tell us, some of these people don't want to negotiate. They simply want the time to stack bodies, right? I mean, let's be honest, right? So what are the tactics we can use to better prepare ourselves? And they're not using the exact Israeli style, what I would call the individual warrior doctrine. But now a first responder, even in a squad car, is going in to mitigate, to capture and kill. Okay, they're not waiting around to surround and contain anymore. So hopefully, at least in Florida, we had a little piece of why that doctrine changed a little bit. But that's what fascinated me about the Israeli style of especially SWAT and active shooter mitigation. Now, hostage situations, different. I understand that. But active shooter mitigation, when you've got somebody working inside of a building, how can you mitigate that threat? And these guys have perfected it, in my opinion.
Well, they've probably got more experience at it than anybody else does right now, because they've been doing it for so long. And guys, the links to Pete's books are down below. Click those, hit them up, buy some books, support the guy, learn some stuff. That's the most important thing, is learn some stuff. Yeah. And we're going to switch gears a little bit, because, everybody knows what's happening right now in Israel between Gaza, and now it's looking like the West Bank might kick off too. Yes. And, they're threatening to unalive hostages, and they've got at least 17 Americans that we know held right now. Minimum, but there's hundreds. How many, Emery? Do you have a current count on Israeli hostages that are held?
Well, no, it's essentially it's over 200, but the problem is they've already started executing hostages, and we're not sure exactly how many.
That's just
the IDF said 130 yesterday. Lieutenant Colonel in the IDF said 130. It's not that they know of. So and he said it would go above 200.
Well, we got a little clip we're going to show you guys real quick, and we're going to come back and we're going to jump into this a little bit, because I know that's what everybody's thinking about.
We're following the latest development in Israel right now as the country continues to battle Hamas militants from Gaza. Israeli officials say fighter jets hit more than 200 targets overnight. According to Israeli and Hamas officials, at least 2,100 people have been killed on both sides since Saturday's initial attack. Israel has mobilized over 300,000 reservists as it prepares for a potential ground offensive in Gaza.
So they're stacking armor. They've been moving tanks, and there's like 300,000 soldiers and tons of armor. But as you and I talked about this previously, Emery, a ground incursion is going to be terrible for all sides.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be terrible for our side. I don't believe that ground incursion right now is the right tactical or strategic move. But it's unavoidable because Israel puts such a high value on every individual life, by the way, including our enemies, which I'm ashamed of, but not ashamed of, but I disagree with. in cases like this. And the ground assault is unavoidable because the number one mission is save the hostages. I have worked, I don't even know how much. I've worked a ton in Gaza, pre-pullout and then post 2005 as well. And Gaza is a horrific, horrible place. And yeah, so I would choose a bit of a different way than what was chosen. But then again, I'm not even an officer, let alone a general or a, Secretary of Defense. So, I'm not claiming to know as much as them or be a professional tactical thinker on that kind of level. I would choose a different way. I'm not going to get into it on the internet because I don't discuss tactics on the internet. But the overall result is going to be, the Army's going to go in. It's going to do what it has to do. All these airstrikes are essentially prepping the ground. They've taken out essentially a lot of empty buildings, and they've taken out a bunch of terrorists. There has been collateral damage, and they've also taken out some strategic reconnaissance collecting equipment that was, of course, being hidden in the mosque. And that's kind of in preparation for the ground assault, which, we're going to lose a lot of soldiers there. We're going to lose a lot of soldiers. That whole place is booby trapped and IED'd everywhere, as it always was. I've hit 2 IEDs in Gaza myself. And this is I can't remember. Yeah. Oh yeah. Pre 2005, even I hit 2 IEDs in Gaza. And so, yeah, the place is a shithole, always has been, always will be. And those people, one of the, I do feel for them because I'm talking about the citizens that live in Gaza. I do feel for them because they live in terrible, terrible situations that have been brought on by Hamas. And previous to Hamas taking over in Gaza in 2007, they were brought on by the rulers there, the Palestinian Authority. And so,
I would say going all the way back to the PLO days, and that's a good distinction because you're seeing online, everybody's like, we need to just wipe them off the face of the earth, and I get that sentiment totally, but at the same time, like Emery just said, there's a difference between Hamas and Palestinians, and I think, Emery, it might be good if we give them a kind of a quick breakdown of just who Hamas is. I know that they're elected to run Gaza. People don't probably understand that, but they are the militant faction over there. They're the terrorist side. And the people did elect them. They actually elected them to do it. But let's give a kind of a description of who they are.
Let's slow down on they were elected thing. That is an on paper fact. But
who counts the ballots? Kind of.
Yep.
That's why I kept saying elected. Like I was like they were elected, but yeah.
Well, so the idea is that the elections that took place were in 2006. This is a group of thugs that has spun out of control. They were always a group of thugs. Their charter is nothing but the destruction of Israel and death to all the Jews. That is their charter. That is their mission. And so, yeah, they were elected, these thugs, in 2006. If that was the case, how come in 2007 they had to take it over by force from the Palestinian Authority, and they murdered every Palestinian Authority person in there and drug their bodies behind their vehicles too? Sound familiar to anybody?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So Hamas really started in around 1987, and that was towards the end of the first Intifada. For the record, I served during the entire and then post a little bit second Intifada, which was a whole different thing and probably should be considered a war. The first Intifada wasn't, but it was. Intifada is an Arabic word that means uprising, for those who don't know. And Hamas just, was created as a terror organization to kill Jews, and their charter, just like every other terror organization, is to end the existence of the Israeli state. And they've been nothing other than a group of thug terrorists since then. What happened was actually, in a way, you could kind of say it was similar to the PLO, which then became the Palestinian Authority after they took over Gaza by force, essentially after these wonderful elections. they realized very quickly that, oh man, we took power because we got all the guns, but we don't know how to run a city. We don't know how to run a government. We don't know how to, provide schooling, provide, basic amenities, and they don't care. That's not their thing.
That's what I saw when I visited Israel several times, from 2012 to 2016. And you look at what's going on over just across the border there in Gaza and even the West Bank. There's nothing maintained. It seems these political leaders collect all the money that the world's given them, the UN's given them, all these funds that's been raised by UNICEF and everybody else, and they're living in Qatar, or like Yasser Arafat goes up to Paris and he's a billionaire, and his wife was, living in the laps of luxury. Why the people in Gaza, they don't even have decent running water, and their streets have got potholes all over them and everything. Just they don't know how to govern at all.
Yeah, and actually, there's a lot of similarities. I mean, you bring up the poverty, you bring up the the poverty. That's not just Gaza, right? The Palestinian territories. There's a similar situation with the poverty there and the government officials. I mean, Mahmoud Abbas, or Abu Mazen as he's called, who's the leader of the Palestinian Authority. He is a billionaire, and I've seen crazy stuff up in the Palestinian territory in the West Bank, like in Nablus and those kinds of cities, where you see some of the most insane poverty that you can imagine. And you go over 2 city blocks, and I'm talking in like 2003, I think it was. I blew up a building there. There was my team. They had giant flat screen TVs. Nobody in Israel had flat screen TVs in 2003. Literally, I'm not making this up, gold plated toilet seats in this building, right? And you walk over a couple of blocks and it's just people living in their own shit.
Well, since we're talking,
Saddam Hussein, you went to all his palaces and everything, and his people were living in squalor.
But since we're talking about the money side of it and what Hamas does with the money, I mean, I know that last year, I think it was, or in the last couple of years, we've given the Palestinian Authority like almost $240 million. I know other nations, Arab nations over there, give them hundreds of millions of dollars. And Iran, of course, gives them about $100 million a year. We just gave Iran $6 billion for some hostages of some whatever variety. And everybody keeps asking, why are we still giving them that money? The transfer is not officially done yet. Why are we still doing it? And Blinken came out and said, because Israel hasn't asked us not to. Like really? That was the reason they gave on live TV. So all that money comes into the Palestinian Authority, and then Hamas rakes it all in to buy thousands of rockets and apparently M4s from everywhere from Ukraine to Afghanistan. They're already tracking serial numbers, and like these came from Ukraine. So the whole thing, they're siphoning off their own people. Let them suffer.
Expand on that a quick second. So the money that's coming in, right? There's a distinction. America does not specifically or directly give money to Hamas, right? That's kind of a roundabout thing that happens that we should know better. We really should know better. Hamas's direct money comes mainly from 3 places. Well, I suppose one of them is kind of indirect. It's direct, but it's unofficial. Officially, Iran and Qatar. Qatar is every bit as much of a state terrorist sponsor as Iran is. They're not as much necessarily on the planning and all that stuff, but Qatar spends just as much money, I believe, as Iran does directly on Hamas. The third group is the UN. And the UN directly gives money to Hamas. Not in the form of, here you go, Hamas, let's give you money so that the whole world can see, because of course that doesn't look good, even though everybody knows that all these UN bodies are completely anti-Semitic, and that's not an exaggeration.
Nope.
But they build schools there. They build, all these kind of public buildings. Where do you think all the rockets are kept? Where do you think the headquarters that Hamas puts in are? They're in and underneath, with knowledge of the UN buildings, right? So
or hospitals, or the university, or civilian apartment blocks, or anywhere that they think they won't get hit because they've got all these human shields around them.
Or the UN tells Israel you can't search this ship because there's just construction material on it. It's rebar, it's concrete, things like that end up going into these tunnels where probably these hostages are being held at. I mean, we talk about our southern border. On the Gaza Strip, there's tunnels everywhere. And I mean, these things are elaborate. We have shafts. You have shafts going 90 feet before you ever get to a drift.
Yeah.
With elevators.
I've been in some.
I saw a video of one today or yesterday. It was where they were storing all the rockets. And it was just a long tunnel, probably maybe 1.5 meters wide. And they had hangers on the wall that the rockets are hung on. And the entire thing was concrete. Floor, walls, and ceiling. All of it. And lighting.
I want people to understand this. Of course, I'm going to be called a liar because I'm on the Jewish side and I'm a Jew and I'm Israeli. So obviously I'm the bad guy and the Nazi, which I find kind of ironic.
So ironic these days.
Yeah, a little bit, just a little bit.
Show me your swastika.
Yeah, right. So all of Gaza, the Gaza Strip, which is like what 20 by 60 kilometers, the whole Gaza Strip. Inside of there's Gaza City, there's Lafiach, there's
like 145 square miles, I think it is roughly, right?
Don't make me do math, Chris.
Yeah,
that's not my strong suit.
Over 2 million people live in that little strip.
Yeah. I read 2.3 now.
Yeah.
Plus about 200 of us. So, all of their drinking water, 75% of their electricity, their food, their medicine, all of that is provided by the state of Israel. That means I pay for it with my tax money, right? I pay to feed these people. And what was happening was years ago, not that many years ago, we were also providing them with building supplies for them to, remodel houses, build new housing, blah, blah, blah. Well, it turned out that these building supplies were 100% of them used to build these tunnels, right? The concrete, the rebar, just like Sue was saying. Wow. There's a section while I was in the military on active duty, we started a section of my unit specifically devoted to locating and destroying these tunnels. And when we were standing this thing up, I was asked to go be a team leader of the first team. And I was like, yeah, sure. Awesome. What's the unit do? And they were like, oh, well, they find and destroy tunnels. And I was like, fuck this. I'm out of here. And I went back to my little hostage rescue thing. But so I'm actually quite familiar with the whole tunnel thing, because even though I wasn't in that section, we work with that section. It's still the same unit. We worked in Gaza a ton. And that's exactly what's going on there. Matter of fact,
go ahead. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Say the first team leader that ended up taking that job was killed in a tunnel caved in on him.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So Emery, I got a quick question for you, and maybe I'm always wanting to learn something, but you talked about the significance of 2005 and Hamas and all that stuff. But when 2005, is my understanding, Israel left, gave it to the PLO, said, all right, do with it what you will. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't Israel leave a whole bunch of infrastructure in place? What happened to that infrastructure?
Pete, that's a fantastic question. In 2005, when we left, just to give you a little context on me personally, I was serving as the research and development officer for the hostage rescue breach section of my unit that we created about a year before that. For the record, I'm not an officer, but I had that post for a while. Yeah, no, I'm a master sergeant. I am not an officer, but
or a gentleman.
Obviously, all you have to do is look at this.
I'm a master sergeant too. Just call us master for short.
So to answer your question, right? There were, up until 2005, there were Jewish settlements within the Gaza Strip. Sorry, I'm a little awkward. I'm leaning into the microphone. We only have one. What ended up happening was the military decided to take a bunch of, by a bunch, I mean like 10 to 15,000, somewhere in there. That's a guess, but it was somewhere in that kind of region of non-combat soldiers, gave them like 4 or 5 days of Krav Maga training and sent them in there into the Gaza Strip to bring out the Jewish settlers. because they didn't want to send combat soldiers in to deal with the Jewish population, right? That's just not right.
Yeah. Bad optics.
It's not just bad optics; it goes against our morals.
And for the world, it doesn't look good anytime the military step in and do stuff like that, So yeah, it was a good call. Is what I'm getting at. Really good call.
Agreed. So at the time, I was in charge of developing new ways to breach in case to breach into these houses in case one of these settlers, really refused to leave, and it was a big mess. But none of these non-combat soldiers ended up being taken hostage, thank God. And we weren't allowed to use explosives, blah blah blah. So I got this literally blank check, and they're like, "Get what you need, come up with TTPs and SOPs to get our guys in case there were hostages." So I'm sorry, I'm taking kind of a circuitous route to answer your question, but I want to give people some background into what was really going on there. Up until that point, there were no real rocket attacks, but terrorism was coming out of there. The fence and all the obstacles that are there now were not there in that way before. There was a fence, but it wasn't any high-tech thing. There weren't all the cameras and all that. What ended up happening was we actually blew up a lot of those houses. We left a lot of the farming, the agriculture infrastructure, the greenhouses and stuff. The buildings, for the most part, were leveled because the settlers there couldn't bear. And I don't know if it's just the settlers, certain people in the government, whomever it was deemed unconscionable to leave them all these people's homes. And so most of them, or many of them at least, were destroyed, and they could rebuild whatever they need to. Of course, at that point, that's when we started really giving them everything. We gave them, all their power. They have a power plant there, which yesterday ran out of fuel. So now because we cut off, we provide 75% of their power, 100% of their drinking water, food, medicine, blah, blah, blah. And
I got a question for you on that, and I just want to ask this while you're talking about the infrastructure in Israel, what they're providing to Gaza. Everybody always talks about how Israel's laid siege to Gaza, and they've cut it off. There's no water, there's no power, there's no food, there's no medicine, blah blah blah. But what about that great big border with Egypt, another Arab country?
Good question.
Isn't any of that stuff coming in through Egypt? Now I know Egypt closed the crossing down there yesterday, and then they came out and said, "All right, we're going to let 2,000 a day through. That's it." Why isn't medicine and food and all these, the needs for the civilians? Why isn't that stuff coming in through Egypt, Emery? I mean, you probably have a better, take on that than I do, but it's just obvious. It's an Arab nation. These are Arabs. Why aren't you helping them?
Yep.
Simple
Chris,
question.
That's a fantastic question. I'm not going to claim to know all the little political kind of issues on the Egyptian side. I think there may be some that is brought in, certainly not electricity and stuff, but some supplies. Going back way before this past weekend and what's going on there now, this whole massacre that Hamas and all these other shithead groups decided to lay on Israel. Sorry, I'm a little bit angered by this whole situation, so bear with me. Let's go back to how Gaza became an Israeli problem to begin with. Okay, and I'll try to do this very quickly. Gaza used to belong to Egypt. You have to understand, if we can, and Holly, if we could find a map of the region, that'd be awesome to put up. So it used to belong to Egypt. You have to understand that there's a big geographic separation. There's a physical separation. It's called the Sinai Peninsula between Egypt and Gaza/Israel, right? So Gaza is like a chunk taken out of the western part of Israel. But it had historically been a more poor, kind of conglomerate of fishing villages, if you will. The Egyptians didn't care much for the Gazans throughout history. They weren't really attached to Egypt in soul, in spirit, however you want to call it. And in the 6-Day War in 1967, the Israeli military forces had to drive through Gaza because there were not a ton of roads going from, central Israel down to the Sinai Peninsula and the Suez Canal area, which is where the Egyptian army was invading into Israel from during 67. So there was never a plan to take over Gaza. There was some fighting in Gaza as the army was trying to make its way through. So there was some fighting, but really they were just trying to get down south to ward off the Egyptian advances. And we ended up taking over the entire Sinai Peninsula, which is a big piece of nothing desert. Okay. The southern 60% of Israel is desert. And then the Sinai Peninsula kind of comes off of that. And it's this huge piece of nothing. Right. And then past that is Egypt, essentially. During the negotiations after the war, Egypt wanted their land back. Cool, legit. And so we gave them back the Sinai Peninsula, and the Egyptians refused to take back Gaza. They didn't want it, and they didn't want it for a couple of reasons. And this is actually strategically genius on the part of the Egyptians. So if you look at the map here on, what you see where the word Gaza is kind of on that lower left on the western side of Israel there. It's a tiny little strip. That line that goes southeast from Gaza, that is the Egyptian Israeli border. And from there, the Sinai Peninsula starts, right? Egypt is further south and west of there. Okay. So that's just to give you a bit of an idea. And if we zoom out, there we go. So that block there, that's the Sinai Peninsula. And you see west, that green area, that's already, that's the delta of the Nile where it spills into the Mediterranean Sea. Okay. So that whole chunk there, I can point to it on my computer, but you won't see. So that point between that little green thing where it says Cairo, going off to the east where the word Israel is written, that's the Sinai Peninsula. So when we gave that back, and you see the geographic separation there between the Gaza Strip and actual Egypt, right? So
that's where Moses and the Israelites wandered around for 40 years. Yeah.
So they say. I think they went somewhere totally different, because you don't get stuck in that desert for 40 years. They didn't have maps, guys. Leave them alone. The company Yeah. So, all right. So that's a bit of a background. Why was it so ingenious for the Egyptians to not take Gaza back? Two reasons. One is financial. They didn't like them. It's a really poor place, and it's kind of far away and separated. So it's just not a fun place to have to take care of for the Egyptians. The second reason, and the really smart strategic portion of this decision, is they knew that if Gaza remained attached to Israel politically, then Gaza will forever be the thorn in the side of Israel. And so it has been. Mm-hmm. And they were right. And it was genius strategically, right? They screwed us forever.
Yeah. Well, when did Jordan kick the Palestinians out? Because I know Kuwait did it. What, 90?
Hold on. Let me
go ahead. Finish.
I didn't mean to cut you off, but let me.
No,
I just realized I didn't actually answer your question.
Okay. There we go. I figured you're probably going to get to it. Go for it.
Yeah, but that gives you background on why we're stuck with Gaza. What started this whole Gaza thing off, right? Your question was, why don't the Egyptians supply Gaza? Well, through the years, they have given some aid to Gaza. And just so you know, so everybody knows, a bunch of years ago, from towards the end of my military service and up through pretty much present day, they've been digging these tunnels from Gaza into Israel. What a lot of people don't know is that the Gazans also have been digging a lot of tunnels into Egypt. What happened when this all started and Israel was befuddled on as far as what to do about these stupid tunnels, and because Israel cares, like I said before, way too much about global public opinion of us, which I don't think we should, because everybody hates us anyway. So what difference does it make? Yeah. And so Egypt was giving a bunch of aid and has after. But what happened was, when all this stuff started, they were smuggling the tunnels into Egypt. They were smuggling drugs, people, and weapons in and out of Egypt. And then that's how they got a lot of the stuff to come into Israel, right? Egypt literally took a bunch of Apaches, because, they have a lot of American arms, because outside of Israel, the highest, well, now Ukraine, but America gives Egypt a metric ton of defense money every year, right? They took
Turkey,
and Turkey
too, yeah.
But they so they took a bunch of Apaches up there and they literally blew the hell out of that entire border and blew up everything there, which Israel couldn't do for political reasons, right? For public, you know, visual aesthetics, right, in front of the whole world. So, but Egypt just demolished it because nobody cares what Arabs do to Arabs.
Nope.
It's when Jews defend themselves that we're Nazis, right? So, so that kind of kicked off like not the best relationship again between Egypt and the Gazans. The only people that really inhabit the Sinai Peninsula is Bedouins.
They're popular.
They're very popular. So, and they, you know, both there on the Gaza border and into Israel, the Bedouins are responsible for 100% of the drug and arms smuggling and human smuggling between borders. So, I hope that's a good enough answer, Chris.
Well, like I said, what I said was, I know Jordan kicked them out once, and then Kuwait kicked out like 200,000 of them in a week in the 90s. Like in a week's time, so 200,000 Palestinians are here. You all got to go. So you see a common theme even among the Arab nations that they're not fans of the Palestinians. They like to talk about it, and countries like Qatar is, you know, they're a big fan of them. Iran's a big fan of them, but nobody else is. And I don't think that it's even that they like the Palestinians so much as it's the enemy of my enemy thing, you know.
That's exactly it. So
and that's all it is. Yeah,
they're not necessarily, the Palestinians aren't the enemy of the other Arab nations. What they are is a tool.
I meant by being an enemy of Israel, you know, you're the enemy of my enemy. So, you know.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah, I'm not.
They're disposable to the other Arab nations.
They're indisposable. Here's why: because they are the forever battle. They are the tool that the Arab world uses to delegitimize Israel. Right until 1948, there was no such thing as the Palestinian people.
Yeah,
right? It was the region of Palestine, as it was referred to by the Brits. The name Palestine, it comes from a biblical root. There was an enemy of the Israelites that are no longer, because in the Bible, whether you take it as historical, you know, fact or otherwise, in the Bible, there were the people called the Plishtim, and that's the root for the word Palestine, which was invented by the Romans. And the Romans named it that when they took over that region in order to poke and prod the Jews, because they named our homeland after our ancient enemy. And that's where that name comes from. The Brits took that over when they took the region over after the World War. And they kind of renamed it Palestine. Up until that point, up until 1948, the people that we now refer to as Palestinians were not called Palestinians. They were just the Arabs that lived in that area. Right after the War of Independence in 1948, I guess it ended 49. The Arab world decided to call them the Palestinian people. Some of them were displaced due to the war, absolutely. Many of them stayed where they were, but the majority, arguably. And so, I say that because I don't know the actual numbers of how many left in the state. But that's
during that war, we just researched this the other night. During that war, Jordan, Syria, Egypt, they told the Palestinians to get out of there because the Arabs were going to rise up and go in there and wipe out all the Jews, which never happened in 1948, 1949.
Well, it didn't succeed, at least, yeah.
In 1949, you know, and I can bring it up. We were just looking at it the other night. The prime minister of Syria and the king of Jordan were like, what are we going to do with all these Palestinians? Well, you know, it's our fault. We asked them to come here in the first place. So in the 80s, they kicked a whole bunch of them out. You're absolutely right. So this problem's been going on for decades.
Yeah. Well, let's switch gears and talk. I know I got a couple video clips we want to run, and then I want to talk about, let's get into why they did this now. Let's talk about this current situation that you guys are dealing with and what precipitated it. But we got a couple little clips of video we'll show real quick, and then we'll talk about that. We're getting all professional in here.
As we all know, shadow banning is a real thing, and I know it affects me greatly. One of the things we're doing to get around that is the new website has a sign up where you can get the newsletter. I highly recommend you go over and do that because you're not getting notifications from all the platforms. Even Patreon's not sending out notifications. But if you get on the mailing list, you'll get the newsletter and any important updates. I'm not going to spam you with a bunch of email. I'm damn sure not going to sell your email address. You don't have to worry about that kind of thing. But it's a way that you'll be able to keep up with what's going on. Because too many people are saying, hey, I didn't get the notification for this. I didn't know you're doing that. That's because social media hates me and they're not sending stuff out. So hit the link down below, sign up to the mailing list. You'll get the weekly newsletter and the updates that come out periodically. But if you want to stay connected, it's the best way to do it. Hit the link below and you guys know the drill. Be good or be good at it.
The First Amendment says freedom of speech. It doesn't say unless it hurts somebody's feelings.
Haven't had enough yet? Stick around for the after show. Bolder, grittier, angrier. On the Rocks with Angery American and the gang is coming up next.
We got to find a guy that does that voiceover work because he's good. I like that cat.
I just looked over like, wow, why am I hearing this from all directions?
You're in my head now. but yeah, let's talk about this current thing because I know this has been building for a couple of years, and in this, let's address too the big conspiracy that's floating around it. Egypt told you it was going to happen, and you guys ignored it. And how'd your intelligence apparatus miss this? So we can maybe talk about that first, and then let's get into why they decided now was the time to send their paragliders over the fence.
Well, due to inflation, that is now the $1 trillion question. Yes, there were many flaws, right? Many things that will turn out to be big deal fuck ups, pardon my French, on the side of the Israeli security forces. I say security forces, that includes all the intel and all the, all the other things. And the army itself. Many things have been not done well for a number of years now. I'm not going to get into all the details. Certainly not right now.
I can hit the wave tops real quick. There you had the Abraham Accords, 6 years ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
Saudi Arabia and Israel were close to normalizing, and Saudi Arabia, the Crown Prince has been just recently talking about recognizing Israel as a Jewish state, right? And if you look at that, that's the reason they had to do this now. Hamas had to do this now, right? But in those 6 years, or let's say the last 3 years, everybody got complacent, especially the United States. They diplomatically, it's a failure on. It's not just a failure on intelligence for Israel. It's intelligence worldwide. United States, NATO, everybody missed this because diplomatically we've backed off of all these things we thought could happen. We were just hoping for normalizing of relations between Saudi Arabia and Israel, and got real weak, And in my opinion, and it's just my opinion, of course, but in my opinion, we allowed Iran to resell their oil. Took the embargo off of the Iranian oil. That gave them $90 billion a year, and then just recently we gave them $6 million. Everybody talks $6 billion, but $90 billion when their oil, when we allowed them to start selling oil again, and especially this current administration, that just really killed everything, as far as the ability for diplomats to have any kind of leverage in that region. Does that make sense?
Well, Sue,
that's all carrot, no stick, right? So
I think that's 100% correct. But in addition to that, there are a number of other reasons why this happened now. One big reason that's obvious to anybody in Israel is that the last 8 months, 7-8 months in Israel, right? There's been this whole judicial reform, which is really it's a heinous thing that our own government's doing. But I know this is going to sound ugly to some of the people listening potentially, but this is reality, right? We gotta be honest here and truthful, because that's something we've lost in the West recently, is the ability to call things what they are. You have to understand Arab culture. The personality of the Arab culture speaks power, right? What I mean by that is, if my enemy's weak, now's the time to attack, right? And I mean a much broader thing by that as well, but that's in this context what I'm referring to. So Israel has shown itself to be weak, not only through the protests. We've had 250,000 people in the streets almost every day for the last 6 to 8 months, protesting our own government's actions just internally. It's got nothing to do with the rest of the world. And that's gotten incredibly huge. Understand, 250,000 people in the streets every day out of a total of 7 million or 8 million Jews living in Israel, right? That's a big chunk of people on the streets every day. So as part of all those demonstrations, we've had a lot of our reserve forces. I'm talking fighter pilots, special ops units, blah, blah, blah. The list goes on, who have been saying, we're not coming in to do our reserve duty to serve a non-democratic government. And now, not one of those people, to the best of my knowledge, has not shown up for reserve duty now, right? There was no question in my mind the whole time that when something like this happens, that's not what they're talking about. They're talking about, I won't go do missions to blow up some city because some politician is out of his mind. That's specifically what they're talking about, right? They don't want to do things that are unethical and illegal. So that, in the eyes of the Arab world, is tremendous weakness. Israel's falling apart. Now is the time to strike. Mind you, Hamas, Hezbollah, Islamic Jihad, the Al-Aqsa brigades, all these, there's tons of terrorist groups in all these countries. Their reason for existence is destroying the state of Israel and killing all the Jews in it, right? So that's what they're founded to do.
About the Arab mentality, and I don't know who said it this week, but it was probably the best description that I've heard in a long time of the Arab mentality that we had to deal with in Afghanistan and Iraq and what I saw later in Israel, which I wasn't a participant in, but I was an observer, was that the Israeli people use their weapons to protect their citizens, right? Whereas Hamas uses their citizens to protect their weapons. And that just struck me. I was like, that is so true. That is so true.
You know what? Not only is that an excellent point that you had made yesterday, and that's really well said. I wouldn't have thought to say it that way. That's really well said. But let me add,
I'm just
repeating
passionate. I'm repeating it. I didn't come up.
Let me add a piece to that.
I wish I did.
Emery, I want to interrupt you because we haven't done this yet, and we need to get this on the screen. And that's the donations you're collecting. Let's talk about that real quick.
Give me a
and let's move on. But let's get, as soon as you're ready, you just tell Holly to put that up. But I want to get that out there because there it is. So let's just do it real fast, Emery.
I just wanted to not get cut off here because my pea brain, I won't remember what I was going to say. What we have here, guys, is and I can talk about this all night and explain why this has to be. We have recruited, called up a giant portion of our reserve soldiers. And one of the big problems with our preparedness in Israel is our failure to have current, adequate, and frankly, enough gear. And I'm talking about personal protective gear, plates, plate carriers, helmets, appropriate guns, et cetera, for
pistol belts, boots, helmets, all that stuff.
For our reserve forces. Our active duty forces have all this, obviously. And so this website up here, and we'll have a link for it. This website, or not this website, but what we're trying to do, this is a few friends of mine and myself. We all live in the States now. And a couple days ago, like the day this incursion started, this, whatever you want to call this abomination of a situation, it was obvious to us that we're going to need gear for our reservists. excuse me. So we got together, and this is the donation part, and 100% of this goes specifically to gear and transportation to there. We are not taking a red penny out of this. This is not a profit thing. I can personally guarantee you that. What we are doing is we are taking this money. We are buying at cost, I may say, not at retail prices. We are buying at cost from the manufacturers, plates, and I think it's written down at the bottom there, plate carriers, level 4 standalone plates, level 3 helmets, and eye protection, ear protection, that kind of thing. And we are getting it directly into Israel and directly into the hands and onto the bodies of our war fighters. And that's what it is. For those of you guys who know me, you know how much I not only hate to, but I really shy away from talking even about money. I hate dealing with money and all that. This is my brothers in arms. These are my countrymen. I've personally already lost a few friends in this conflict in the last couple of days. And so until I can do other things, this is part of my involvement in what's going on. So if you can, we'd really appreciate your help. If not, please just keep our war fighters.
Hey, it's working. Numbers are going right there while you're talking, brother. It's working.
Oh, right.
And that's why I wanted to get this up. I know I cut you off, Emery, and I know that your train of thought probably wandered away. But it was important to me that we do this because we want as many people as we can get to hear about this, and start sharing it. And Emery, I'm going to put a post up on Facebook on my page in a little while with this link. I'm going to put it up on my page, and I want you guys to share the shit out of it. Let's do everything we can to try to help here, because we know Emery real well. A lot of you guys know who he is, and I know that from his heart he means what he's saying. Like this, there's no fuckery here, guys. This money's going to go straight to the IDF reservists who need this gear. Because I've seen some of the reservists and was watching today some videos going, what the hell do they wear that for? This is why they don't have what they need.
Exactly.
And this is the way we can help a little bit.
Vietnam era flak vest.
Yeah, they're wearing flak jackets. Yeah. I mean, it's like, what is this, 1968?
Right, exactly.
So
I appreciate it, brother. And
yeah,
we knew, and this is a whole other topic, but we knew that all the world leaders that came out in support of Israel was a surprise to us. It was really a surprise to us because we know how much most of the world hates Israel. And you know what? That's why we have a country. Most of the world hates us, and we're sick of being butchered in other places. And now we have an army to defend us. Now we have a country that's ours. And even though I live in the States now, and I live here because this is also my home. I love this place. I'm a dual citizen. And I love this place just as much as I love Israel, where all my ancestors came from. But myself included, I was born there and raised there. But we knew that even after all these declarations of we stand with Israel and the Eiffel Tower is blackened out and all that, which is a heartwarming gesture, even though it's not really good.
Did you see what the French police did to the pro-Palestinian protesters on the streets of Paris the other day?
No.
Hickory shampoos for everybody. They just turned the riot police loose. Just let them push them off the streets. I mean, they went full 1960s on them.
Well, they need to do that in New York and in Chicago right now, and Dearborn, Michigan, and a few other places. Before I know we're getting short on time, but
no, we're not. We're going to run a little long tonight, guys. Okay. We're going to go a little long on this because there's still a lot here to talk about. So if you guys are cool with it, always good.
I love it. A couple quick questions. One for Emery, and then one for Chris. Do you feel like the $6 billion paid for hostages embolden this conflict? First of all, the Palestinians. Secondly, the question I have for you, Emery, is do you think that other actors are using this because they see that the United States policies is more toward Europe right now and their assets are over in Europe taking care of that conflict? So before you answer that, Chris, the question I have for you is, seeing the weakness in U.S. policy globally, do we fear something going on in Taiwan?
We should be, because a lot of people probably don't know it, but China's been moving hardware to the coast en masse. Soldiers, armor, attack helicopter. Everything's being moved, and they're doing a lot of harassment around Taiwan right now with both the Navy and the Air Force. And if China's ever going to make a play for Taiwan, if this becomes protracted even just a little bit, like if Hezbollah steps in a bigger way, I mean, they're already sparred with each other, but they haven't really kicked off yet. And, Lebanon's saying, please don't do this to us. They're begging Hezbollah not to do it. But Qatar is ready to step in. And if Iran steps in, China's going to be able to look around and be like, well, America sure as shit can't do 3 things at one time because they can barely do 1. Now they're trying to do 2. There's no way in hell they can bother us. And they could they could probably take Taiwan before we could even respond, in my personal opinion, because it's such a short hop that they have to make. Whereas our assets are a bunch of them are going to be in the Med. The Ford is there now. There's another carrier group on the way. There's an MEU on the way. The 101st was just pulled out of Romania, is being sent to Jordan. If that should tell you something, we stuck the 101st there because we were afraid of Russia. Now we're saying, this is what a real threat looks like, and we're moving the 101st. So if I was China, here in a few months would probably be the perfect time for them to do this. I mean, I hope they don't, because the world's already a dumpster fire. It would be terrible, in my opinion. So now let Emory have that.
Yeah, that's awesome. So Emory, back the $6 billion for hostages. And do you think that state actors are using the fact that we have assets over in Europe as a chance to go ahead and spark this thing off in the Middle East?
Look, I'm not.
In your opinion,
I'm not a professor of anything, let alone geopolitics. But I don't think that's exactly the way I would put it. Let's start with the $6 billion to Iran on this ridiculous hostage thing, right? We traded 6 hostages for 6 hostages, or 6 prisoners for 6 prisoners, essentially.
Yeah.
That nobody's saying who they are. I just know that the ones released from Iran are dual Iranian American citizens.
Which we also currently have working inside the administration, by the way, folks.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and we've had all along, right? This Huma Abedin woman, and all these other whatever.
Yeah,
different story, right? So essentially, I don't think that the $6 billion to Iran emboldened Iran to do things. I don't think it specifically brought anything on. I think it just gave them more of a tool to be able to do what they were already doing, right? Iran's plans haven't changed. It's just that the daily task has changed, right? So, I do think that let me make this bigger than the $6 billion. Maybe that's a better way to explain it. It's not the $6 billion that made this happen. It's what the West, led by starting with Obama, thanks, Dick, has done with Iran, because this whole JCPOA, the nuclear deal, was a complete abortion from day one, right? The whole JCPOA, and I don't know how anybody bought into this garbage of a lie. The JCPOA, which is the nuclear deal, was started essentially, in my opinion, Obama wanted to get in the history books some more. And the reason I say that, not about Obama, but the reason I say that about the JCPOA is Iran does not want nuclear weapons. Listen to me well. Iran does not want nuclear weapons. What Iran wants, what they're after, is to be a nuclear threshold state, where they've been for the last bunch of years. The only thing stopping Iran from having a nuclear weapon is a political decision by the Iranian government to go ahead and finish the job. And it would take them a few weeks. They're missing a few components on the missile end, whatever. But as far as the nuclear capability, it's a political decision away. That's it. Why do you think they haven't made that decision? Well, they haven't made that decision because they're not trying to get there. The second they actually have a nuclear weapon, they know that even if America is too impotent under the Biden administration to do anything, Israel's going to blow them back into the dark ages. And so, and God forbid they actually used it, the whole world would blow them back into the Stone Age, right? So Iran was never after that. Now, why would Iran want to be a nuclear threshold state? It's much more beneficial. Now they have exactly what happened. They won, guys. They won during Obama, which I'm not calling him a traitor. Just saying.
Walks like a duck, talks like a duck.
Right. So, but here's what I am saying is let's not call him a traitor. Let's say he is dumb enough to fall into this trap, right? He's not a stupid person.
No.
So now this gave them a trading card. This gave them the really good baseball cards that everybody else wants to get from them, right? Because everybody else was too damn stupid to understand they weren't really after the war, the nuclear weapon to begin with. They wanted the bargaining chip, and they got it, and we capitulated over and over. And Biden's criminal administration forcefully tried to restart the JCPOA, and Iran was like, F off, buddy, because they'd already got what they need, right?
Well, his whole cabinet is former Obama people. Let me expand on that a little bit, and saying, and just doing, and I'm not a geopolitical professor either, but Israel has been a nuclear power for years. Have they ever used it with all those enemies all around it? Now, let me ask you this. Would Jordan or Syria or Iran or Qatar use a nuclear weapon on Israel if they had the capability? You damn right they would, immediately, because it's in their charter to destroy Israel. I mean,
I just read a quote today that said, if Palestine were to drop all their weapons, there'd be peace in the Middle East. If Israel would, they'd cease to exist.
Yep.
So that's
exactly.
Thanks for saying that.
That's exactly right,
Pete, because that's exactly when Sue said the thing before, and then we talked about the website for donations.
Yeah.
That's exactly the point I was going to make. I wasn't going to say it as eloquently as you did, or as succinctly. My explanation is this: Israel has it, and let's just talk about Hamas and Gaza for a second to give a really condensed example. Okay, if Israel was such an apartheid Nazi state, don't we have the military force to kill every single person there by noon tomorrow or earlier? Of course we do. We have,
or earlier. We start earlier, we finish earlier.
But we don't, right?
Yeah. No.
Now let's flip that around. Forget having an army, forget having enough weapons. If tomorrow morning every person in Israel laid down their weapons and said, all we want is peace, we will not fight, by noon tomorrow, there will not be a Jew in the Middle East alive.
No.
Period. And this is not something that started this past weekend. This has been forever.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So
let's segue in, since we're talking about the why can't I talk tonight? I ain't slept in 3 days. That's why. Let's talk about what's happening on the ground right now. You know, we mentioned a little bit earlier, Israel's called up the reserves, and they're coming home from all over the world, guys. Like, that's one thing about the Israelis. Wherever they live in the world, if their homeland is under threat, they come home and they stand up and do what they're supposed to do. Unlike what a lot of Americans won't do, even though they live here now, they won't stand up on what they need to do. And they're pushing armor to the border. Now, like you said, we don't know if there's going to be a ground incursion, but let's talk about what's happening now. Because I've heard some reports that there may have been some drones from Lebanon come in. We know that the Israelis are doing airstrikes all over Gaza and completely leveling neighborhoods where Hamas is operating out of, not the civilians. And they're telling the civilians to get out before they bomb, which, I mean, who does that? Russia never did that in Ukraine, but Israel is sending out text messages, WhatsApp, Telegram. They're communicating on every platform they can, saying, get out of this neighborhood. We're going to bomb it. So they're doing their best to prevent casualties because, like you said, Israel cares for every life. But give us an idea of your take of what's happening on the ground, and then I'm going to get Pete's take on what he's seen and following. And because I know you got friends there too, Pete, but I know you said most of yours are probably incommunicado at the moment. So, but what's your take on what's happening? And Sue too, because of his past experience in that part of the world. So let's talk about the groundwork right now.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to get, I can't get into what's about to happen.
No. I don't want nothing like that. Let's talk about what has happened and what kind of is happening. Not looking for, advanced knowledge.
Not for your benefit. You obviously know that.
Yeah.
I'm saying that for everybody who's viewing's benefit. I'm not going to get into what's literally about to happen.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is, look, the fighting around the Gaza Strip kept going for at least another day and a half after the initial invasion. Most of the fighting was cordoned off to there, or was focused there for the first pretty much 2 days. Sorry, I'm kicking the table. The first thing that came to my mind when that happened was, oh my God, get everybody to the north, get everybody to surround the West Bank. Because if this is kicking off from Gaza, and we can get into the little tactics they used and stuff, and why I was thinking that, oh my God, this is not a Gaza thing. This is a pan-Arab thing. This is a all sectors invasion. Turns out I was wrong in terms of the first day, because I was convinced that was going to happen the first day. But it's happening now. I think they missed their tactical window to do that the first day. But they're trying to draw ground forces into Gaza so that they can, so that we can incur way, way bigger losses of human life. And B, I think, in order for this operation to not really be known ahead of time for operational security, I don't think they shared this with the entire Arab world, right? I even read a thing on the Israeli news today that claims that Iran was surprised, even though they were part of the planning and they were funded it and gave intelligence and all that. I read a thing, and I can't tell you for sure that it's true. I read a thing on the Israeli news today that said that Iran was even surprised by the timing of it.
Khomeini came out and said they weren't involved. I mean, he made a public address.
Oh, well, he never lies.
Well, but I'm saying the fact that he came out and made a public address is rare. That's
Yes,
kind of odd,
true.
you know.
Absolutely.
It's a little different, you know.
Absolutely. So let's talk about what's really going on. So since then, a lot of our forces have been focused on closing off that border, killing every last terrorist that's on our side of the border. And then, right, because that's phase one, put out this fire and then start fires elsewhere, right?
Yeah.
So the rocket barrages are literally nonstop coming out of Gaza into Beersheba, where I have family. That's where I grew up. Into and north into Tel Aviv. There's even been rockets fired in the direction of Jerusalem, which is uncommon. The West Bank, which has not been talked about almost at all, has been called out. The people of the West Bank have been called out to just start doing a bunch of terrorism, and there is stuff starting to kind of burble up there. So that's happening. That's, by the time all this has started, that and Lebanon and Syria, which I'll get into in just a second, by the time all that crap has started, which is why I'm saying they missed their tactical window, we'd already had a very large amount of forces, army forces, military forces in those other regions. There were already a very large number of our fighting forces for the last year in the West Bank, because there has been, for those of you guys who don't know, the whole last year has been a very intense wave of terrorist acts, most of which coming from the West Bank and East Jerusalem, the Arabs living in East Jerusalem, and some Israeli Arabs also. For those of you who don't know, there are about 2 million Israeli Arabs. They're the same families and everything as the Palestinians. They just ended up on the inside of the border as opposed to the outside of the border. They have voting rights. They have a political party that represents them. They get free school, free medicine, all that, just like any other citizen in Israel. They are also the number one highest crime rate and murder rate in Israel, against each other, by the way. Now, so the West Bank is starting to rot, in the sense of act up in terrorism right now. Lebanon.
Yeah.
Lebanon has a government that's predominantly Christian Lebanese, Christian Arabs. That government is incredibly weak. That country is completely in shambles politically, economically. The last few years, it has been on the verge of absolute disaster internally. It's got nothing to do with us.
Yeah, they used to have a nice port.
Lebanon used to be called the Paris of the Middle East.
It was. Yeah.
So Lebanon is de facto run by Hezbollah. And under Hassan Nasrallah, he's the cowardly head of Hezbollah, who's been hiding away in a bunker for the last 20 years because he knows that as soon as he sees the light of day, we're going to fucking kill him. And I mean that literally. Pardon my language. I'm a little bit
Emotional.
Passionate.
Is that word?
Passionate.
The only feelings I have are hot, cold, and recoil, right?
Hot
So
you ain't on the range, man.
right. So Hezbollah has for a long time, they play this cat and mouse game with on the northern border of Israel. Sometimes rockets, sometimes they'll send a couple people in to kind of break through the fence. There's areas there that don't have a fence on the border, by the way, and they're constantly patrolled by tanks and jeeps and all that stuff. And don't worry, they're not just running through. So in the last couple of days, it started with a couple of rockets here, a couple of rockets there, an anti-tank missile that was fired at a vehicle.
M113 personnel carrier that got hit.
Well, then there was another one that was missed.
The first one missed, and then I watched a video earlier today of an M113 taking a direct hit from a anti-tank, guided rocket and smoked it. So.
Yeah, for the record, I mean, this is not a new thing, right? I have a good friend of mine from the Army who died on the border there, not during time of war, and he, this sounds like a bad word, but it's literally the name of this missile. He was on a D9 with the D9 operator. He was an EOD operator, and they ambushed him, and Jan was his name, good friend of mine. And he got hit directly in the head by a French faggot missile.
Oh,
fired by France, right? Fired by Hezbollah.
Yeah.
And so, this stuff does happen there often. They send in UAVs on occasion. By the way, where do all these arms come from? Directly Iran. When you hear in the last bunch of years, the last decade of Israel bombing Syria, we're not bombing Syrian targets. We are bombing one of two things. We're bombing either weapons shipments going directly from Iran via Iraq, via Syria, into Lebanon for Hezbollah, or sometimes they fly them into Syria and then drive them to Lebanon. And the second type of target we strike there are Iranian army bases that the IRGC has been building from the central Syria down into the south in order to attack Israel. So that's why we've been attacking Syria all these times in the last decade. For those of you guys who thought that for some reason Israel was just randomly shooting at Syrians. So that's where all the weapons in that region come from, is Iran, sometimes Russia via Iran. So now the first couple of days of this war, Hezbollah has, done these little, kind of firing a couple of rockets and, the couple of missiles and whatever as kind of a distraction and all that. And now it's starting to step up. They did send in a UAV. I'm not sure if it came in from the Lebanese border or across the Syrian border. They're right next to each other.
Yep.
And that was taken out by our anti-aircraft capabilities. I believe actually by a jet. And all of that is flaring up. And by the way, now Syria. So nobody's been talking about Syria. The reason people who know what they're talking about have not been referring to Syria in terms of this war is because everybody thinks, well, Syria's, their army's kind of messed up from all this infighting and all this civil war and stuff over the last bunch of years. I don't think Syria is going to send an army. What they do have in Syria is a bunch of primarily Shia militias that have been fighting there for many, many years now. And so there's some stuff potentially starting to happen there from Syria.
Well, they already sent a bunch of those to Ukraine to fight there because, Assad doesn't want to keep those militias sitting around bored. It's a bad thing for any country to have huge groups of armed dudes just laying around with nothing to do. So they sent a bunch of them to Ukraine. So his militias crossing over and getting involved in this is a very big possibility.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Now, let me bring this into something that will touch all of you personally. And by you guys, understand, I'm talking to you, the viewers, us, all of us, in terms of what's going on right now. We're focusing so much on what's going on in Israel. Guys, this is the same tactics they use on a smaller scale inside of Israel. They are using globally as well. And don't think for a second this wasn't the plan from the start. I've been saying this for years and been called a nutbag for it. What they're trying to do is ultimately do away with Western culture in general. That is the charter, if you will, of Islam. Right? If you're not Muslim, you're subhuman. So what's going on now is a big push for Muslims and Muslim sympathizers all over the world, but very specifically in America, to rise up and kill Jews. And for those of you guys who don't know, Israel is referred to as the small Satan, and America is referred to as the big Satan.
Mm-hmm.
Big Satan.
So
Khalid Mashal, let's talk about him for a minute because there's been a lot of questions in the comments. Everybody asking about Friday and what's been talked about on Friday, and you know who he is and could probably explain that better than him, or better than me, who Khalid Mashal is. But he did call the Muslims to action, and Friday's supposed to be the day. And you're seeing all the local communist groups here in the U.S. Quickly sided with the Palestinians, and it's interesting. Some of the blowback that's happening. I don't know if you guys saw the statement that came out of the Harvard student body about how everything that's happening in Israel is all Israel's fault and they're all to blame for it. Coming out of Harvard, Ivy League universities,
30 student organizations,
35.
They all signed it, but now they're all panicking because American, I'm going to say industry. By that I don't mean manufacturing. I just mean business in general. Got together and said, "We're not going to hire you bastards for saying that," and they're going to blacklist them. So now they're all freaking out, trying to backpedal and claw back what they've said in their little statement, saying, "Oh, we didn't read it, we just signed it," and that's brilliant.
That's why you got into Harvard.
That's why you got into Harvard, yeah. So, but let's talk about the call to jihad, essentially. That or the what's the other term? Because I'm so tired, I can't remember.
Jihad is
Fatwa.
Well, no, what's the other one?
Fatwa.
Well, fatwa is
Fatwa. That's what
it was different. Yeah, that's a call.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's essentially what he was issuing, though, was a call to arms.
Yeah.
I mean, he doesn't call it that, but his statement is
literally
pretty
what it is.
clear. Yeah, it's pretty clear. So, he said to show anger, especially next Friday in Muslim countries and also among Muslim diaspora around the world. He called it the Friday of Al-Aqsa flood. He said that this will send a message of rage to the Zionists, to America, from the Zionists, well, for Israel and America. So he's calling for them all over the world to, in other words, do what you can. Whatever ability you have to make a strike of any kind, do it now. Yep. And that's what the Friday thing is about, guys.
I believe, by the way, the literal word that he used, if I'm not mistaken, it was at least what I saw here, said to commit pogroms on the Jews, which anyone who knows about, Eastern Europe and the history of Jews there, the pogroms were raids, murderous raids by the Bolsheviks and a bunch of other groups beforehand against the Jews in Eastern Europe and Russia and those areas. Not really an ironic use of that word in his meaning.
So
he asked. I'll just say this: he asked the Mujahideen to go in long caravans to spill their blood on the land of Palestine. These are his final words. Funds are important today, but we are asking for your blood and souls. So go ahead, Pete.
So Just an interesting fact. You said, it's not just going to be about the Jews, though. It's going to be with people they think they're collaborating with the Jews. It's going to be guys like me and you and our families. They're not just going to go after the Jewish people proper. So why is that? All at the same time, there's a big push to fight our Second Amendment, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how important right now is our Second Amendment right? How important is it to have the ability to protect you and your family? Now, we were talking, it might have been before the show, about Israel and how some of their arms were taken away from the common people. That's what they're trying to do to us right now, guys. So get your preps together, get active. The Second Amendment, that trumps everything we have. That keeps everybody else in line. So just food for thought. And I got more to elaborate on that, but I'm gonna wait till the after show because this is too public.
Yeah, well, yeah. Come on, don't be scared. Don't be scared, Pete.
I'll put this out publicly, and I'm enraged by all this like everybody else. But Friday, I wouldn't use any kind of public transportation. Friday, I wouldn't go to any sporting events. And if you have children in public schools, I would let them stay home on Friday.
Yeah,
and just self-protection. I mean, in many cities right here in the United States, we're not allowed to defend even our own children.
Yep.
Yeah,
and we don't want that to happen. What happened on Saturday to our own children, our own grandmothers, our own families, So just, bunker down and let's see what happens. But protect your own.
Friday's going to be a good day for a self-care day, as they always like to say. Self-care. Stay home. Stay close to some iron. You know what I'm saying? And just keep your eyes open. Is what I would recommend, because we don't know what's going to happen. I know I've seen a lot of stuff come out of the leftists. They're planning all kinds of crap. They're massively emboldened right now.
We don't know how many sleeper cells are here. I mean, come on. In the last month set a record for the southern border. And the State Department finally released and let the Border Patrol release how many people of interest they've actually arrested. And it just blew my mind. They got 6,000 Iranians that they've arrested, since this whole border incursion on our southern borders happened. And the reason I think I'm enraged, and I think, Pete, I don't know how old you are, but I know Chris and I are about the same age. We've been dealing with this our whole lives.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just the Biden administration or the Obama administration or the Carter administration. This goes all the way back to Nixon. I mean, this is ridiculous. I mean, the 72 Olympics, the Munich Olympics, it's all a threat, not only to the Jewish people, but to America itself and the Western culture, like everyone was saying, right? They absolutely hate us, right? And they've been here in our own country for so long that they've created, not only sleeper cells, but we've got entire organizations that are anti-Semitic.
Mm-hmm.
I saw the protests in New York the other day. They were holding up swastika flags and pictures of swastikas. And the conservatives are the dangerous ones in this country. The conservatives are the ones who call the Nazis all the time. Yet we have pro-Palestinian protesters holding up swastikas. Who's the real Nazis?
In Sydney, Australia, they're chanting "Gas the Jews."
Yeah, I was going to say that. I didn't know if that would be appropriate or not. But
this is what happened. We're not making this shit up.
You're absolutely right. But I want to get back to some of the stuff going on in the colleges in our nation right now. And what people need to realize is places like Harvard or Rutgers and stuff like that. This is where our future lawyers are coming from. But more importantly, these lawyers will be judges someday. So imagine that. So look what happened to these liberal judges during the riots, the BLM riots. It was a circular pattern. They'd get arrested, they'd go to a judge, they'd be back out on the street the same night. This is a plan. This is not, none of this is by accident. This is a plan. And sooner or later, it's going to come to fruition. And you're either ready or you're not, but either way, you're going to deal with the consequences of this plan.
You're absolutely right, Peter. I mean, look at that clown face that was presiding over President Trump's court case last week in New York City. I mean, the guy is a clown without makeup. I feel sorry for him. It's just crazy.
Sue, can I jump in a second?
Yep.
Since we brought up Black Lives Matter, here's the poster. Here's the poster.
Yep.
By Black Lives Matter. Let me
I stand with Palestine.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That is one of their little skydive monkeys with a Palestinian flag hanging off his parachute.
We have a very, very real enemy within that people are failing to recognize. Guys like us recognize it, but there are people on the other side of the aisle, or people that just want to keep their head in the sand that don't recognize us. And we're the conspiracy theorists. We're the ones with the tinfoil hat on, right? No, this is a plan. They're out there. Get ready for it, because if we're not going to be faced with it, our children are, or our grandchildren are. So
well, I think President Bush said it fantastically after 9/11. When we figured out, hey, we're going to have to go into Afghanistan, we're going to have to wipe out the Taliban. And during his speech, he said, you're either with us or you're against us. And I think the Democratic Party needs to stand up with, the old Confederates who've been trying to destroy the Constitution since, the 1860s. And they need to admit right now, you're either with us or you're against us, because what's happening over in Israel is going to happen in the United States soon. And I think Chris brought it up about Taiwan, and I think Iran, Russia, and China are basically joined at the hip. And once it happens here domestically, I think Chris is exactly right. China will pounce.
Yep. Because it's definitely coming. Guys, now's the time to start taking this stuff super serious. Like in the comments a minute ago, my good buddy Corey just said, stay strapped or get clapped. Like, that's kind of where we're getting right now. I would also remove target indicators. If you've got bumper stickers on your vehicle, get them off. If they're anything about guns or politics, or get that shit off of there. And start being aware of what's happening around you, because things are going to happen here. It's just a matter of time. We can all see the machine in motion, but we don't know exactly what it's doing yet, but it's moving and it's doing something. So it's up to you. It's incumbent upon you, because no one is coming to save you. It is up to you to be ready to deal with what's coming. And Pete, you trained, Sue and Emery are both instructors. Guys, let's give them everybody, because I want to cut this off here in a few minutes, and we're going to jump over to the after show. I don't want to keep you guys up all night, but let's give them folks a couple of things that they should be thinking about and doing right now. If you've been watching the news from Israel, you can see what those people went through, locked in their homes for hours and sometimes playing dead for hours. You don't want to be in that position. And it's sad that the Israelis were, but they're not allowed to be armed in their country. A lot of you probably don't know that, but we are here, most of us. So get serious about things. Make sure your house is prepared. Make sure your vehicles are prepared. Have a plan. Have a comms plan. Have an alternate, a contingency, a backup, emergency plan. You need to do all these things, and you need to get started on them now if you haven't done it yet. But Pete, what do you think? Some stuff that you could tell folks.
Look, I'm going to go real basic, and I'm going to tell you something that you can tell your kid. Not worried about the guns or anything. Something you can tell your kid. These things right here, when you come out of a store or you get out of your car, and you immediately, the first thing you do, you're looking like this. Situational awareness, right?
Yep.
I mean, you're never going to see somebody coming after you. And God forbid you're looking at your phone and you get clapped, right? So teach your kids situational awareness, okay? It's as simple as that. If you want to start anywhere, teach your kids that. And then as they get older, you want to teach them how to get nasty, then teach them how to get nasty.
Yeah, eyes up, head on a swivel,
Yep.
Yeah.
And I to add to what Pete just said, I think right now, I've got cousins and aunts and uncles that live close to me. Right now is a good time for a family meeting, and say, okay. And if you got children over 10 years old, you sort of say, if an emergency happens, this is what you're going to do, and have rendezvous points where you can go to these people, because things are going to collapse, and they're going to collapse quickly if there's a surprise attack in this country. Right. So tell your family members where to go, pick out safe houses or safe places, or even just a place where they can isolate and hunker down until you can get to them, and say, stay there until we get to you.
Yeah, another good thing, since you just said that, Sue, is if you live in a predominantly, or in an area where you might be the minority, and I don't mean by color, but color is one consideration, political opinion being another,
politically,
religious,
you're a minority.
Whatever. If you're a minority where you live, you might want to reach out to family and friends who live outside of that area, and I mean a distance outside that area, as a fallback. And be prepared to move, and be prepared to move fast. I just wanted to add that real quick.
Yep.
Yeah.
Check your go bags. Have them ready. Exactly.
Yeah. And I was just going to say, I want to give a shout out to my daughter. She came back from college this week, and I must have raised her right, because one of the first things she said when she got here, Dad, we need to go over my get home plan.
Awesome.
And I was
That's
like,
a good girl. You're doing a good job, Pete.
Damn it. This, you want to see a grown man cry? It was damn close. So, so work on that stuff with your kids. What's your rally points? Where are you going to be? Even when she was in high school, I laid out a map. I say, I will pick you up at this house right here. If you can't go to this house, go to this house. If you can't hide in these weeds, I'll come get you. That was even in high school. Okay. Because I was never the,
Helicopter.
I was never the run. Well, I was never the run, hide, fight guy. I was usually the fight guy, but sometimes you got to go. And you're just overwhelmed. So have the backup plans, go over it. I know Chris has a lot of information on how to do these things. There's other writers out there. Franklin Horton.
There's lots of guys.
Franklin Horton goes through a great thing on how you set up a notebook for your family. Anyway, that's all I got. I look forward to the after show because I really want to cut loose.
Well, we're gonna do some questions and comments and stuff from the viewers, guys. We're gonna run through these, and then we're gonna jump over into the after show. So first one is straight for Pete. There you go, Pete. Patrick's a great dude. I talk to him on Twitter all the time. So where's the new book, man?
Yeah, I decided I'm going to get it out 6 months after book 12 comes out.
Well, then you're going to be putting it out in April.
I'm just kidding.
In November.
I'm just kidding, but it will be staggered a little bit. It's almost there, guys. It's almost there. I'm excited. And then
tell them the same thing I tell them, Pete. The 32nd of February.
Right, exactly. It's hard, right? Chuck B.
But yeah, they want more. And we were just talking about this. Patrick said this one, and we were all just kind of going over this. So, you guys are seeing it like we're seeing it. We might see a little more. And I'll tell you, I troll a lot of the leftist media places and a lot of their chatting places, and where they talk all their smack. And you would probably be surprised at the level of barbarity that they fetishize over. It's really scary, guys. It really is scary.
Are you really surprised? I mean, come on.
Well, I am, because these aren't people that have these skill sets or have an experiential frame of reference. So I get why they fetishize it, because they don't know what it looks like. But just the fact that, I've seen in places where they honestly think that the right in this country is going to walk into the ditches and kneel down for them. It's really not good.
Well, I think it's generational. I mean, look at after Vietnam. Look, we went to this 20 years of peace, almost 25 years of peace, or then 9/11 happened. I think people just forget, what it looks like to see a man fall from a building that's been hit by a plane, right? And then two buildings fall down, and it kind of shocked me. Just a month ago, we were trying to remember 9/11, and it was barely mentioned, on the news on September 11th, and people just tend to forget, how brutal that is, with our kids playing these action or first action shooter games and all these video games and everything, people don't really understand what's going on until you hear reports out of Israel, babies with their heads cut off. Who does that?
Yeah, that's that barbarity.
That kind of crap.
And I was watching the news today with my daughter, and I got to thinking. I mean, she is 21 now, but I go, is this too much for you? Is this like over sensory seeing what's going on? And she goes, I need to know this, Dad. I need to know this. And I said, you're absolutely right. You need to know what your enemy's prepared to do to you, because while you're worried about algebra, they're training on how to kill you and kill your kids. And it's just
and worse.
It's the way it is, and worse. Yeah. And worse.
Yeah. So like Sean right here says, he's fully expected if we go boots on the ground anywhere, which I told you guys earlier, they pulled him 101st out of Romania and sent him to Jordan. That would be a trigger for the sleeper cells that are here. Obviously, we know they're here to act. And he's right. If we do that, it'd be a different game entirely. But they're going to start it before that occurs, I think. Because another thing that they can look at this is if they can get enough chaos started here, it would deter us from being able to act anywhere else. So don't think that it's only going to happen if we go kinetic with somebody. It can happen before then.
May I jump in a second?
Please do.
I want to shoot a quick message to, in case anybody from the 101st, in case anybody from those forces going to Jordan or the surrounding areas, including our boys and girls on the ships that are over there in, near Israel right now. Just because you're in Jordan, which is a friendly country, and I know that we train Jordanian forces, all that, all the time. They are our friends. Just because you're there and you're not boots on the ground quite yet, guys, keep your heads up, keep your muzzles up, all right? Because this is going everywhere. And the last thing we need to see, we don't want to see Americans die. We don't want to see anybody else die anymore, right?
Yeah.
So, but I'd much rather see y'all kill our enemies than having body bags come back here. Okay. So don't be complacent, because there's been complacency that's taken place, certainly on the Israeli side, right? We call a spade a spade. You know, we have to recognize our mess ups, and we have to talk about it. Right. So guys, complacency needs to be over. Whether you're 101st badass that's going over there to help and do your thing, or whether you're a capable citizen living here in America, concerned, capable citizen living here in America, or in, Toulouse, France, or anywhere else. Y'all keep your heads up keep your head on a swivel, and we're all in this together, guys.
Yeah. And for those, like you're saying, those guys deploying, I don't want to see soldiers die, but if our soldiers are dying, I want it to be in combat, not sitting in a cafe in Jordan.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? And that's what you're getting to. I know that's what you're saying.
Exactly.
And to the 101st, they are awesome. 82nd, those guys are awesome. But now Hamas has more combat jumps than all of you combined. So,
well, that's what I want to put out for our woke military the last 3 years.
That's terrible.
I know it is, but I'm a Marine Corps man. I mean,
But for those officers, those leaders in our woke military, that this whole woke culture has been pushed down their throats for the last 3 years. Please do not let another Beirut, at the airport happen like what happened to our Marines in 1983. No. Do not put people out on guard without magazines in their weapons. Everybody, all the ammunition needs to be unloaded. Issue the ammunition, issue the grenades, and let the troops protect themselves, no matter what. Even if they
be weapons free,
even if they make a mistake, it's better than losing 250 Marines like we did in 83.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, Emery, this one's for you. So do you think there will be an attack from the east? And if Israel has to fight on both fronts, will they be successful in retaking the Temple Mount?
First of all,
convoluted question, but
it's not going to be taken by them, period. Okay.
I know that's what you say.
Let's squash that a second. It's not going to be taken. Just a cute little anecdote. How many times is Jerusalem mentioned in the Quran? Right? Right down below.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for the question, Guillermo. Do I think there will be an attack from the east? Are you talking about an attack from the east in Israel as far as the West Bank?
That's what he's talking about.
Okay. Well, it's already starting. That's what we were talking about before. It's already starting. Do I think there's going to be an assault like there was by Hamas the other day? No, I don't. If they do attempt it at this point, sorry, Bubba, it's too late.
Yeah, it'd be a futile effort right now.
Yeah, no, you're going to get blown back into the Stone Age just like Gaza's getting right now, except before you hit the fence. So
long before you hit the fence. Yeah.
Now it is a very legitimate question, right? And that's what I started with earlier when I was saying the second I heard the very first peep about what was going on, my first thought was, oh my God, get our boys to the east and to the north.
Yeah.
Right. Because it's, knowing a little bit about how these guys, run their business, or have in the past, even though this type of thing at this scale and with these tactics is unheard of or
unprecedented.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's a very big possibility, but I think that what it's really probably going to look like is more of like an uprising, more of like a bunch of people running around with guns, as opposed to a extremely choreographed operation. Now, from Lebanon, we could see something like that. Yeah. I don't think the West Bank right now has the organization to be able to pull something like that off. There's definitely there's stuff going on. There's stuff, guys. There's been stuff going on in the West Bank just over the last year. It has gone. The number of events and the amount of violence has gone up substantially. There's always waves in Israel every couple of years, right? There's not peace, but there's relative quiet, and then there's a mess, and then there's relative quiet, and then there's a mess. The last year has been a mess, so it's not like they've been sitting dormant for a while. They're there. It's there, guys. This has been happening. There have been 2, 3, at the minimum, terrorist attacks in Israel every week for the last year. So, everything's happening. Everything's happening kind of all at once. They're trying to be really shifty about stuff, which in the past we've been able to know everything pretty much ahead of time due to intelligence. Why was there the whole intelligence failure? I'm actually kind of glad we didn't get too deep into it before, because
we just brushed over it. It's that's the $1 trillion question. Like you said, everybody's asking that right now. So, and it'll be months to years before that's ever,
it's not going to be years, in my opinion, because as soon as we kill this little conflict that's going on here, Israel's going to be way on top of figuring out exactly what happened. That's why right when this started, people were referring to this as like the second Yom Kippur War, the 1973 war. And the reason they referred to it that way is because what happened in 1973 is we had an intelligence breakdown where our military intelligence and our intelligence bodies at large were saying, no, there's no way there's going to be an attack today. There's no way there's going to be an attack. And 3 armies attacked immediately. So that's why they were calling it that. We'll find out. I have my guesses. I'd rather not get into that right now because it's very sensitive, and I don't want to be wrong about it publicly either. Right.
Yeah.
I'm not going to state something as fact when I don't know. So let's let them do their investigation.
Yeah, I stuck that one up there for you because, we're having the problem here, and we are seeing a little bit of this in Israel. You guys are having the same kind of a problem, different taste to it, but it's the same kind of a problem. So
that's correct. That's correct.
It's correct. And Chris, that was actually really well said on your part, right? It's a different taste to it, but yeah, absolutely. That's true. And it's been going on for quite a few years, actually, in Israel. Look, socially, Israel is very liberal. I'm not talking about politically. Socially, Israel is very liberal. And I say that in a very positive way. Women don't have to be covered because God forbid a man is tempted by a woman. Well, the ultra-Orthodox, yes, but they're, a small minority and they're nuts.
Yeah.
So, but Israel is very liberal, meaning you are not only allowed to, but you're welcome. You're encouraged to think your own thoughts and speak your mind. You're encouraged to express yourself in however way you want, as long as
they were doing it on Saturday. There was a big party going on, a big dance going on, and 250 people were basically butchered.
Yeah. But so they're asking about the wokeism in Israel. It's not exactly wokeism, but there is there's a very, very vocal, very left-wing group in Israel. It's not like a specific group. There's a lot of very left people, and that's okay, right? If you think about it, guys, all this talk in America about, damn the left, oh, damn the right, whatever it is, that's bad. Any country, any political system needs both sides. We need both sides. We need a balance. Everything in the world is better when you have balance. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, but a lot of aspects of the left in Israel have been out of balance. By the way, the right as well. But what's going on is, a lot of people, there are organizations, I can't remember the name of the one I'm thinking about right now, but there's one organization specifically where their thing, and they're Israelis that served in the military for the most part. And they've been going around saying, oh, Israel's been doing atrocious things because apparently they've been reading the Hamas charter and liking what they read.
Yeah.
Well, let me tell you this. Hold on a second, Sue, because this is an important part. I'm sorry.
You guys Canadian all of a sudden?
From my experience, from my personal experience, and I've seen a lot, we as in the Israel Defense Forces, we are the most ethical fighting force that I know. Okay, I can sit here. I don't like telling war stories. I don't do that. But I can sit here and tell you dozens of stories that I personally witnessed, that I personally was in. I'm not even talking about all my friends who have been and blah. I'm me, right? Where the most unthinkable things have happened from the other side, and we didn't even shoot back, even though we were fired upon, because we will not kill children, because we don't want to take the chance of killing a child or a non-combatant. And yes, I know there have been bad things that have happened in the past for sure. And the difference between us and them is, for example, a few years ago, there was a young Israeli soldier. There were two. Let's start the other way. There were two Palestinian teenagers, right? I think they were 17 and 19. Don't quote me on that. Who came up and started stabbing soldiers in the street. This is in West Bank City. And they started stabbing some soldiers in the street, and they were neutralized. Okay, they were shot. One of them died immediately. The other one was laying there bleeding, and they had called backup forces with medics and that whole thing, because that's what we do. And if you want personal stories, maybe in the after show, I'll tell one or two. But what happened is the backup force got there from a couple clicks away or whatever, and this young idiot soldier comes up, and you see this, it's on video. He racks around into his chamber and shoots this terrorist that's laying bleeding to death on the ground. Now, this guy just stabbed an Israeli soldier. Mm-hmm. And then this other kid comes up and shoots him while he's down. You know what happened to this Israeli soldier?
Probably prison for the rest of his life.
He went, probably not the rest of his life, but for a long time. Yeah. He went to jail, and that is correct to do. That was the correct outcome, because that is called murder. We don't murder. Yeah. We don't. Right. So I want to make this very clear, especially because we see stuff like I was looking up these pictures. People are sending me insane stuff. This propaganda on how, like a caricature, not a caricature, but like a cartoon type of thing, where a girl sitting there asking, well, with the thought bubble, isn't Hamas, not justified in doing the things that it's been doing? And then the other girl answers her, yeah, but, understand that there are no civilians in Israel. They are all, soldiers, and they all deserve to die, blah, blah, blah. And Hamas is the best and ethical. And they're literally taking what's going on and flipping it 180 degrees. Yeah. So that's why it's so important to me to say this right now. And I want people to know that. And if you don't believe me, cool, I don't give a shit. But that is the fact in the field. That is the truth. And it is what it is. So
talk about the woke thing. I mean, look how many. I mean, you got all the Hollywood elites. You got a whole bunch of financial brokers and everything in New York City and all over the East Coast here and everything. There's a whole bunch of those people are Jewish. They're actually Jewish, and they are part of the woke movement here in the United States. So let's just understand that.
Oh, I've seen signs being held in New York City: Jews for Palestine, and gays for Palestine, queers for all this stuff. It's like, it's
what those
they need to read more. Those people need to read more. Is what needs to happen.
What those people are. This is a friend of mine who's Jewish called me up yesterday and said this to me. He says, "You know what those people are? Those are here's what they are. They are the Jews that got on the train to Auschwitz, and when they got off that train, they tipped the conductor. That's what those people are."
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember the German name for the ones that helped. Go ahead. I'm just thinking of something.
Let's talk about the word equity that they like to use so much. Equity. All right. This invasion on Saturday had the casualty count's way over 1,000, but let's just take 1,000 for simple math, right? Like Emery said, there's 8 to 9 million Jews in Israel. All right. There's 9 million Jews worldwide. So that's 18 million Jews. There's 1.8 billion Muslims. All right. So if we put equity into this, I think the IDF has permission to go into the Gaza Strip and wipe out 1 million people if that's what it takes to get the job done. That's equity. When you really put your finger on it,
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. Well, we've got one more question, and I think it's the most important question that's been asked in the comment section all night. And this one's serious. So, who wins in their prime, Sue or Emery?
In their prime?
No.
I'll give it to Sue because he's
I'm past my prime.
he's too stupid to lose.
He's too stupid to lose. Like Daddy always said, if you're gonna be dumb, you better be tough, boy.
Let me tell you guys something about Sue. Let me tell you. Hey, can you close your ears or like walk away a second?
No.
I can't say nice things to him when he hears. I can't.
It's terrible. It really is.
Sue's one of my very best friends. No, seriously, like take your headphones off.
Put them back on. Jesus.
He won't hear me when he takes those off. His volume's all the way up. This man sitting right here is the real American hero. People like Randy Rawhide.
Randy Rawhide, yeah.
These are the people that I look up to. Some of the people that I look up to, and I get to call them my best friends. And what this fucking idiot has done in his military service is some of the craziest, awesomest examples of what badass Americans have done in the name of this country and in the name of keeping us all safe. So I just want to have that said. You can put your headphones back on.
Not completely.
Sue, you should let me write your autobiography for you. Let's get together and I'll just turn on an audio recorder and start
You don't know how
recording.
many people
Let
have
me write that for you.
I've got the name of the book. It sucks to be me.
It sucks to be me. A boy named Sue.
Boy named Sue. Sucks to be me, but it's not conducive for a good military career. Remember, I only made it to master sergeant. So yeah.
That was a good question though. But my question is, since you guys are staying in the same room, who's on top tonight?
We're actually not staying in the same room. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
I bought us 2 rooms. 2
at the Roach Motel by the hour. How expensive is 2 rooms by the hour? Like that's got to be a fortune.
Well, it depends how many strippers you bring in.
Yeah. Well, we're going to wrap this up, guys, so we can jump over to the after show where we can get a looser things. Pete, I know we didn't give you a whole lot of screen time in here tonight, dude, but thanks for being here. We had some big stuff to talk about, and I know you understand that.
Let's bring him back.
I love it. I learned a lot tonight. I appreciate you guys having me, and it was great. I look forward to getting with you guys, Emery and Sue, and getting to know you a little better.
Oh, yeah, you have fun with these clowns.
And I know we're going to hang out here in a bit at the after party, but I do want to say this publicly. Not that it matters to anybody. I'm saying this to you, but I appreciate and respect what you do. And I'm very interested to hear about, more about what you do. And thanks for doing what you do. And thanks for being with us and letting me, me run my suck. So
Pete, we should all get together down in Immokalee, man. Like all of us go down there. That'd be some fun, dude. There's a prison, an old abandoned prison down in South Florida. The training's done down in Immokalee. We can go down there and have some real fun. Straight up.
I've been there. Yeah, they got alligators on that place.
Now that the ATF has made UTM ammo illegal for civilians. Thanks, Nazi.
Fucking serious?
Oh yeah, great job there, ATF. Yeah.
Motherfuckers. All right. Well, we're gonna get off this because we're gonna bitch about that here in a few minutes.
Hey, ATF, back to BB gun wars. Here we go.
Thanks for making it safe, guys.
Yeah, thanks for making it safe, you clowns. Guys, all of Pete's links are down below. Buy his books, buy his manuals, learn some stuff. And again, I just want to say to Pete, again, really thank you, brother, for being here. To
pleasure.
You guys watching, mash those buttons. I hate to be the guy to ask you to do that because, everybody does it. But we do it for a reason. It matters. It does matter.
Pete, say it. Smash that like and subscribe button. Come on.
I can't do it. I can't do it.
Oh my God. For you guys listening, we do this live every Wednesday at 8 p.m. And for you guys watching, you can download this podcast anywhere you can find podcasts. So you have no reason or excuse to not catch what we're doing. And now with that, you guys know the drill. Be good at it. Stay safe this Friday. Head up or eyes up, head on a swivel. pay attention, situational awareness, like Pete said, guys. And come on over to the after party over here. It's a lot more fun over there. As much fun as this is, we have more fun over there. So you guys be good or be good at it, and we will catch you next time.
For those of you who are viewing this podcast, you're in luck. 3 of these ugly men have grown beards. Haven't had enough yet? Stick around for the after show. Bolder, grittier, angrier. On the Rocks with Angery American and the Gang is coming up next.